Hi everyone, it's Tonya Gibbs, and today I want to share with you a process video of me making this mixed media layout of my daughter and I. The photo was taken on my birthday last year. I'm going to be featuring a lot of products today from Die-Namites Dies, the birdhouse branch die, the leafy branch die, the summer branch die, the spring doily, and the winter bouquet. And I will put links down below in the description for you guys to reference. So to get started, I'm going to use the spring doily, and I've just cut it out on white cardstock, and then I've sprayed it with this Krylon metallic spray paint, and look at the shimmer on that. And then I'm also going to take and gesso this piece of paper. I like to pre-gesso my paper before I die cut because the dies are so intricate that if you try to wet them or add the gesso, you're liable to break off part of the little fine pieces. Now I'm going to use my Faber-Castell Design Memory Craft Pit Artist Pens, the big brushes. This is the dark sepia 175, and that is the summer branch that I'm coloring. I'm going to cut 3 of those and color them the same way. So I did end up flipping them over and coloring them on the back side because there's so many fine branches that I wanted to make sure that everything was saturated with color. I didn't want to see any white lines. So now I'm going to color the birdhouse branch die with the sepia ink, and that again is the dark sepia 175, and then I'm going to grab the Meg green and color in the leaves with that, and that's the 170. I've cut 2 of each of the rest of these dies out um, on that pre-gessoed paper, and I think taking the time to color all of these little fine details is so important because this really helps your dies to stand up and take notice. It gives them new life, and it also gives them a little bit of depth. So I'm sharing quite a bit of this process with you so you know how I colored it and the colors that I used, because since these dies are going to be the focal point of my page. I'm coloring here the winter bouquet. This is becoming one of my favorite dies from Die-Namites. I love the shape of the leaves and the flowers, and then the overall cluster is really nice for cards, so and layouts, and it's really great filler. So then I'm going to go back with that same exact color and color in the branch on the birdhouse branch. Now I'm going to take the light cobalt turquoise 154 marker and color in all of my birds, and then over the top of that is the Phthalo Blue 110, that's the darker color blue, and then I'm going to finish off the flowers with the medium flesh, which is 131. So again, there will be references to these in my blog post, so please make sure you go check that out. The links are down below in the description. And like I said, I know this is a tedious part. I could have edited it out, but I really wanted you guys to see how I color all of my dies. I'm not spending a lot of time fussing with shadows and things like that. It's not necessary, but it is nice to color them in. And the pre-gessoed surface gives me a prep surface. The India inks that are used in these pit pens are actually, they go on wet, so if you use a prepped surface, you can blend with them. If you use a non-prepped surface, then they go on like a magic marker. So that's why I prepped everything first. And then once these are dry, they're permanent. I don't have to worry about them bleeding out anywhere. Spending a little bit of extra time filling in all these little details will really make your layout come to life. Now I'm going to take the gold color shine from Heidi Swapp and just spritz those, and that's going to give it help blend those inks together. This is the leafy branch die, and I'm using the cherub pink from Tattered Angels to color that up. We're going to make a flower out of this after it dries. Now I'm going to take the Heidi Swapp lattice stencil. This is from the Hearts and Lattice collection. There's several dies in that one pack. I really am loving this particular lattice shape lately, so I'm adding some modeling paste to that, and I'm just being erratic with how I do it. I want it not to have a uniformed look, and this is the Liquitex light modeling paste that I'm using. Now I'm going to take some Recollections micro beads and pour them directly onto the wet modeling paste. The modeling paste will act as an adhesive once it's dry. Those beads will be stuck in place. Then I'm going to take the honeydew melon from Tattered Angels and spritz around the base. That's going to give my flowers like a little shelf to sit on, and make it look like greenery. And let it drip just a little bit. Then I'm going to come back with the Tattered Angels dried hydrangea. And it has kind of a purpley blue tone to it. So the first time I sprayed it, it kind of looked a little gray. So I just kept adding one more layer on top until it turned the blue color that I was after. This is a Seven Gypsies file folder that I have coffee stained, and originally I was going to have this go portrait, so I started building out my background. I'm using a Glitz roller stamp. This is the doodled triangles, and I'm using the Ranger archival ink, and I'm going to just kind of trace around those edges where the modeling paste was not finished off, and the arrows are going to lead your eye back up to the photograph. And I'm going to use that file folder as my photo mat for my layout. And I'm just testing which way the arrows are going because I really want the arrows to be pointing towards the photograph. Now I'm going to use this stamp from Stampabilities. This is called Faded Text Background, and I lightly added ink to that stamp so it wouldn't have a complete coverage. I wanted it to just be faded out and in the background, not really noticeable, but just a little added depth there. Now I'm going to use a 1.5-inch circle, or excuse me, a 1-inch circle, and I'm using the leaves off of the leafy branch die, and I'm going to apply them to the circle. I cut these out on book text because it's really thin paper, and I find that for this type of flower, I wanted something a little thin that I could easily crunch and manipulate. If you do decide to use a heavier stock paper, you could definitely wet the leaves before you begin to mold your flower, and it will release the starches in the paper and allow you to really get some nice texture and structure to your flower. So I'm just, like I said, just adding these to the center. You don't have to use hot glue. You could definitely use a quick dry wet glue on this. I just happened to use hot glue because it was sitting on my desk. And just continue around in a circle till you get the desired thickness that you like. I recommend offsetting the petals to give yourself a really nice, full, beautiful flower. Now I'm going to add this pearl center. I eventually end up taking it out before it's over. I found a better center later on, but uh, for the sake of letting you know what I go through, I didn't want to edit too many of my mistakes out. So I like to keep you guys in the loop on it. This is real. I make mistakes too. I change my mind too. So I'm fluffing that flower up just to give it a little more depth, and decided that it needed a few more leaves added around the base. So I'm going to continue to fill in with the remaining flowers around the edges, just where I need them. This is going to help to give it a little bit more, to make it a little bit bigger flower in diameter. So continuing on around the flower. Once I got it the way I wanted it, I took my vintage photo and started to distress up the edges of my file folder just to give it again another layer of shadowing. I find that by distressing the edges like this and leaving the centers undistressed, you're bringing light to the center and darkening the edges so that your eye has a lead in back to the center of your photograph. Now I've taken this Amy Tangerine roller stamp that has Remember on it, and I stamped it onto that file folder. Now here I am. I've decided, okay, let's pull up this pearl, and then I had to glue back some more flowers. Right before I pulled that up, I had sprayed that with some of the gold Lame Heidi's Swap Color Shine. That's why it's so bright now. And that flower center to me just has way more character and really fits my layout design a little better. And that was just a button in my stash. I happened to run across it. Then I decided, wait, my layout isn't, my photograph is horizontal, not portrait. So I'm having to fuss with trying to figure out how to make this horizontal work now instead of the portrait. I've added the lace at the bottom to diffuse the color from the background a little bit, and then placed my uh, birdhouse branch over the top, right at the base of that file folder, to make it look like a garland hanging there. I love how that looks. Just love it. And the lace adds that little touch of a feminine accent and offers that, softness to that background. So I'm adhering it down with some foam adhesive, trying really hard for placement not to cover up everything that I've just done. Now I'm going to take my spring doily, and it's going to be the base of my cluster. I love to use these doilies for my base, but notice I only put a spot of glue. That way I could tuck in around. And typically when I build out my layers, I go from, one side to the other. You'll see me bounce back and forth here. This is the winter bouquet I'm adding over here to the right. And I decided to add those little pearl centers to the center of that bouquet as well. So now I'm just kind of looking at it, and it's like that doily offers the perfect base for my leafy branch flower that I've created. Uh, then I'm adding over some more of those little branch dies. I'm trying to find placement and decided to abandon it for a second. Take the doilies and flanked out the rest of the file folder. Again, working in a visual triangle and trying to give depth. Don't be afraid to cut your die cuts if they're not tucking the way you want to. You can always use those pieces you cut off and other layer clusters around the page. Again, just fill it in as best you can, and remember, anything that's hidden, cut it off because it can be used later. This layout, the title of this layout is Know in Your Heart That You Are Loved. And so I've had these hearts from Melissa Francis I wanted to try and work in. Just couldn't find the placement for that yet. Then I have these bird houses from Recollections that have been in my stash for ages, and decided to use them because they went really well with the birdhouse garland. Now I'm just taking some green twine. This is that jute twine, and making a loopy bow, and that is going to serve as the leaf to my homemade flower that I made there. Now, this layout is made almost completely of scraps, and look at how beautiful it is. So every now and then I just have to thin out the scrap pile, and I go through and I find things like this, like these birds, where I've used some of the product and it's just laying around. So I'm going to color up these birds. They're from Prima, and they are pre-gessoed. So I used my Faber-Castell Design Memory Craft Pit Artist Pen, and that is the light Cobalt Turquoise 154. I'm coloring the bird all around and making sure all of those little edges and everything are completely saturated. Then I'm going to come back with the darker blue, which is the Phthalo Blue 110. And I'm going to color in the back of his wings and the base of his head, maybe a little bit of his body and his tail. Birds are typically darker on the top than they are on the bottom. So I'm just kind of giving a little depth and shadowing in here, and then go back with the blue to kind of blend it all together, the turquoise blue. And then I'm going to end up, I'm not sure if I show on this one or not, but I'm going to end up coming back with the cold gray 6235. It's like a Roman numeral 6235. And that's going to add his beaks, his little feet, and then apply a little bit of shadowing to his wings as well. And then I'm going to spritz the whole thing over again with the gold lame from Heidi Swapp. And that's just going to make him blend in with everything else. Now I decided that since I went with the horizontal layout versus the vertical, I needed to add a little more of that green there underneath the file folder. So that's that halo, or no, that's the honeydew melon from Tattered Angels. And now I'm going to start out with my summer branches and start layering out those clusters around my file folders. I love these because they're so thin and spindly that they don't feel like they're adding a lot of bulk. But they do add some detail. And again, I'm gonna put my bird there next to the birdhouse, and he just needed a place to perch. So the branches just offer that nice place for him. You don't really want anything free floating when you're doing your layer clusters. So I recommend looking at things like this. And these dies are perfect filler for your layouts. So again, that was the piece that I cut off on the left, so I'm adding it to the right. And see how now my bird just looks like he's flying in and swooping in on that birdhouse. now I've taken some, these were white Prima Daisies that I've spritzed with the Tattered Angels Cherub Pink, and then I'm coloring in the centers with my Pitt pen. This is the Green Gold 268, and I realized that I used pearls on the other flowers, but my button in the middle of my leafy branch had rhinestones, so I wanted to make sure I incorporated those rhinestones back in. But those were just a little too bright, so I'm using that green gold to color in those rhinestones. Now I'm going to pull out my layout and color in the rhinestones on the leafy branch with the green gold too. By having all of these extra textures for these flower centers, whenever I use the green gold to color every single thing in, then they all seem to come together and work together nicely. So even though they're different textures, they really work well. I end up coming back and coloring the pearls later in the video. But I really like the way that those Pitt pens, since they are permanent, you can write on them on a slick surface. So I'm a little out of frame here, but what I did was I pulled out this word plate, and it had these little loops on it. Don't cut them with your Timmy scissors. I realized what I was doing. So I grabbed out my wire cutters and cut those little loops off because I didn't need them. And it takes some work to get those off, but it's worth it in the end because now it just looks like a nameplate. And then I'm going to find my sanding block and go ahead and sand off the edges of that word plate just to soften it up some. It's kind of rough where I cut it, and I don't want it to be scratchy. So the sanding block just helps to file down that metal and make it a little more smooth where I cut off those edges. And I don't show this in the video, but I do take that green gold and I painted that metal piece. So you can use your Pitt pens on the metal as well. So now I found placement for that little heart from Melissa Francis. I painted it gold and then stuck it up there by the top of the file folder. And I've decided to build out another layer cluster there at the top. So I'm coloring in some more of those birds. Like I said, I love using old remnant pieces from my stash every now and then. All of the dies were cut from scrap paper. All of these little elements like this were little pieces found in my stash. This is a great way, a layout is a great way to use up a lot of product. A mini album is another way that I do it. So here we go. I'm going to add that little bird. He's flying. And again, I'm just going to add the same colors as I did on all the others. And this is going to help to build out a visual triangle around my photograph and send your eye back down to the photograph. Notice that whenever I glued him down, I got him kind of close to the branch, like he's going to swoop in and land on that branch. Now I'm going to take some of the little leftover pieces I had from the leafy branch and tuck it in around him, and also over on that left hand side. These little pieces like this would have actually gotten thrown away, and they're really great to add to the clusters, and they just sort of make that leafy branch flower work with the rest of the layout. And those little soft pops of pink just help to soften up all those dark rich browns. So again, just filling in. Notice I work in a visual triangle. I start from the one side, go to the other, and then back down to the bottom. Now it's time to really focus on that top piece up at the top. I decided that I needed another birdhouse up there, and I did have one, and I painted another little bird and perched him up on top of that heart. And then I decided I really wanted to soften that doily up. It was just a little too bright, so I used some of the lace that I used at the bottom to kind of help diffuse that doily just a little bit up at the top. I didn't want my eye to go to the very top of the file folder. I wanted my eye to rest there on my photo. And I find that, I just took my scissors and trimmed up that circle around that edge of that lace so it had more of a circular edge to it. Now I'm going to take this Krylon spray paint, spray it into the cap, and then drip it onto my layout. And to me, it looks like 24 karat gold. Since it's spray paint, it has a little more tooth than the Color Shines and the other liquid mediums. These are more acrylic, so they're thicker. And when you heat it up, that texture really pops from that spray paint. So I really love this effect. I love the way it looks. And the gold just kind of helps to bring in the gold from all of the spritzing that I've done on all of the layout. Now this is where I decide that those white pearls are really bothering me. So I go ahead and color them in with my Pitt pen in the green gold 268. And that just kind of helps all of these flower clusters really look like they all belong together, even though they all have different textures. And I love that the die cuts have the open areas, and then the daisies are closed up. So you get a lot of a variety for your eye to really pay attention to, and it's just like a little feast. So this is the one piece that I had left over that I had cut from just a piece of scrap. So I've trimmed off the leaf off of it, and I'm going to add it to the cluster up at the top. I love this is why I love these dies, because look at how these leaves look all by themselves. And then I'm going to see what I can do with this other one, because to be perfectly honest with you, it'll never get used if I don't use it now. And so I decided now is the perfect time. And as I'm fiddling with it, I'm messing with that lace. I realized it wasn't really glued down very well, so I had to pull it up. And I can edit the stuff out, but guys, I really think it's important for you guys to see that I struggle the same way you do. I have the same challenges. Everything doesn't come together really super quick for me either. So I've taken that, and there's no point in wasting any of it since it's going to be tucked under that file folder. So like I said before, I cut off the pieces that get tucked under, and that one little flower really looks nice nestled up there by itself because the leaf is independent. So I decided to add that to the base of the word plate because the word plate kind of looked free floating, and this will help to bridge it between the two clusters on the left and the right. So thank you guys so much for watching this process video and for hanging with me during all of this. I know it was a long video, but I wanted you to see how well your dies can look on your layouts and how pretty and feminine they can be. So if you want more details of this layout, please go visit the Die-Namites blog, and I have a link down below for you guys to easily reference. And then I will put a complete supply list on my blog, so make sure you go check out my blog as well. And again, that link will be down below. Thank you guys so much. Also, if you're looking for ideas for these Die-Namite dies, the design team does a fabulous job at posting on the Die-Namites blog. They have some awesome ideas, and there's also a challenge going on, and this layout was based on that challenge. So go check that out. Again, all the links that you need are down below. Thank you again for watching, and if you like this video, please hit subscribe, share it with a friend, and I will talk to you guys later.